Hello there, welcome back to the channel. My name's Red, and today I'm going to introduce what I feel this video should be named. I feel like a video in this style should be called a Red Talk. So from here on out, if you see it in the title, it's a Red Talk. Basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about something that I like within the industry. Maybe it's something I dislike. Maybe it's a game impression, but I'll probably isolate those to an impression. Maybe it's a comparison, whatever it might be. It's more often than not just a discussion about something that I feel like I want to talk about and hopefully engage with everybody back. So with that, I thought we'd kick off our first Red Talk with Pokemon. And I'm a Pokemon fan. I enjoy Pokemon for what it is, and I always have, and I seem to always will. However, I feel that Pokemon has got a problem that only Pokemon could have, and so it's a Pokemon game with a Pokemon problem. And to give you a little history before we start this video with my experiences with Pokemon, I've played since the original game. So I'm a Gen 1er, I suppose, for a lack of a better term. Probably one of my favorite generations, just purely because that's the game I started with. I like the simplicity of it. I really am happy with the simplicity of it, and I don't feel like, although the changes are obviously necessary and there's been some really good changes, I just like the simplicity of it. I go back and play Pokemon Blue on my 3DS maybe at least once a year, sort of every 18 months I go through and I replay it again, because I just enjoy it for what it is. That's just me. Okay, but I have played every installment after Red and Blue, so I think I'm a fairly good judge as to why I decided to make this video and to discuss it with you all today. So, what am I talking about? Well, with the recent release of Pokemon Sword and Shield, like many, I was quite excited to experience what the next step for Pokemon would have been, which was the jump from a small handheld device onto a slightly bigger handheld device, but obviously going from let's say a secondary console onto a primary main flagship console, so the 3DS to the Switch. Now, a lot of people, as we now know, are probably a little bit disappointed because of all the controversy that has happened in relation to Pokemon Sword and Shield. And for those of you who aren't aware, here's a quick recap. There was the Dexit issue, in which a lot of the Pokemon were taken out of the game and told that they would not be returning. The ability to not trade your Pokemon up from previous editions, even though they may appear in the Pokedex. What else is there? Oh, Dexit is the term for that, first of all. No national Dex, which sort of makes sense, as I just said. There's the Dexit issue. And then saying that basically all the models would be reused. Sorry, not reused, they'd be redone, and the animations would be a lot better. And as we saw, that was not the case at all. We'd actually had basically the same models the entire time, and that upset quite a few people, as you could understand. So what made me start thinking about this topic and wanting to discuss it was, first of all, the expansion pass into Pokemon Sword and Shield. Okay, so you've got two expansions. I think it's the the Island of Armor and the Island of Thunder. And first things first, if they can produce like quality content and it's actually decent, then I can understand why like people are excited for it. But I, for one, still have not finished Pokemon Sword or Shield. I own Shield. My partner owns Sword. She's barely started it, but I've pushed through to about 6 gyms now, I believe it is. And there's one thing that just keeps bothering me, and it's the fact that, despite the fact that I always get excited for a new Pokemon game for the adventure and going through the story, even though the stories are always sort of like tacky and cheap, but like seeing the new regions Pokemon, exploring the world and all that sort of stuff, like that's the thing that gets me in, that's the thing that gets me excited. And this time around, like I can't say that was the case, because I think with the introduction to the wild area, whilst an alright idea in concept or in theory, in execution, I just feel like it fell really short, and it doesn't necessarily just rely on the theory, but the execution as well. To me, the wild area is just a big area of nothing, and that's a problem, because the more I sort of go back to it, the more I sort of play it, and the more I sort of I'm at a loss for words today. I can't even speak. But the more I travel through the wild area, the more I seem to find myself sitting there going, "Why am I doing this? Like, this is not fun." Because like I'm at a stage now where my Pokemon are grossly over leveled due to the fact that I can find stronger Pokemon in the wild area, so that I've eliminated the need to grind, which for me is perfect because I don't. It's not that I don't like a challenge, I just don't want to deal with having to go back and fight, trainers again. I don't want to have to go back and worry about it, because this is a game that I'm truly not invested in. And it's a real shame, because normally when you... Not that I've lost a Pokemon battle in a mainstream game for a long time, but when you lose a Pokemon battle, like, it should make you sit there and go, okay, well, I was really underleveled for that, especially like against a gym leader or something. But Pokemon Sword and Shield has just eliminated that for me, like, because it's just given me the ability to power up my Pokemon and my team so quickly that it's just cut out any of the fluff. Now, a lot of people will sit there and go, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing because of the end game. Now, I don't play the Pokemon endgame. I'm not a competitive Pokemon player. I'm not like criticizing people who are, but I think the main problem with that is the people who are competitive Pokemon players, they're the minority. Like, they're the smaller group of people. I feel like that the vast majority of people who play Pokemon are really just the ones who either are completionists and try and complete the decks every iteration of Pokemon, or they're probably more along the lines of what I am. It's just enjoying the game, building a team of Pokemon that you maybe not played with before, and just finishing up the story, and that's it. Beating the league, done. And I often come back to a Pokemon game, so I'll restart it, pick a new starter, and start again and build a new team and so on and so forth. To me, that's the perfect experience. But unfortunately, as I said, like, I don't feel the need to return to Pokemon. I think what it's trying to do now is focus too much on that end game and getting there as quickly as possible. And to me, that's just scratching surface number one. The reason why I don't play competitive is very simple. Before we move on to point number two, is because I feel like to get into competitive, there's such a wall that needs to be passed. To be even closely competitive at all, you have to be able to have the Pokemon with the right stats and all that sort of stuff. And it just bothers me so much. So, what can I say other than that? Because I sit there and say, well, this time I'm going to be competitive. And then by the time I get to the end game, it's just like, I'm not there, I'm not invested, because, first things first, I've got to find a Ditto with the right, a nature, or maybe it's got to have a certain amount of IVs or EVs, whichever ones they are, and all that sort of stuff. And the problem with it too is the fact that, like, it's so convoluted unless you're looking up a video on how to do it and all that sort of stuff. It's like it's never truly explained to you, which to me is kind of a step back. Like, to give you an example, I criticized Destiny, like, not on stream or on video or anything like that, because this is well and truly before my channel. Sorry, I just turned my mic off there for a sec accidentally. But I criticized Destiny for one reason. It was the fact that I had to go outside of the game to learn about the game. And I'm not talking about how to shoot. I know how to shoot, right? But I'm talking about like the story and the lore, you know, and especially with a game like Destiny where the story is a large component of the game, despite it just being a shooter looter. Like, that's really annoying for me because I'm sitting there, it's like I just want to be invested and immersed in the game because this is my downtime and this is what I want to do. I just want to chill out. But I can't do that because now I have to go, if I want to learn the story and understand what's happening, especially with Destiny 1, I've got to sit down on my computer or on my phone and read the text, you know, and I don't mind reading stuff like Witcher 3, for example. I sat down and I read all the books that I found because I found it so interesting and it was right there in front of me. And to me, that was the best thing about it. And that's where you know, Destiny fell apart, and I feel that's where Pokemon falls apart. And the idea behind having to go somewhere else is an off-putting thing. So that's why I don't competitive battle. So reason number 2 I feel like Pokemon has a real issue is, and I'm going to be critical of the expansion passes right now, because we heard the developers say themselves that they were not going to implement any new Pokemon into the game, and that it was going to be like that for future generations as well. Like, they were talking about that things were going to stay as they were, and that was how it is. If we didn't like it, well, there's not much they could have, there wasn't much they were going to move on. So a lot of people got upset noticeably, and people started crying out, you know, this is a Dexit issue, you know, it's not fair that you're cutting these out. These, like, my favorite Pokemon are getting axed, so on and so forth. And now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we've seen Game Freak change their tone, like seemingly out of nowhere. And to me, I can only see it for what I think it to be, and that's the fact that it was planned from the start to cut those Pokemon out. Maybe not so much for time, because I understand that like they had to rework a lot of the models to make them look a little bit nicer. But considering they're taken from the 3DS games, I honestly don't feel there was that much work that was required. And to me, that's really annoying, because I feel like the game could have been a lot better because of that. You know, to just if you're gonna just copy and paste everything, you might as well put as many of them in as you can to kickstart off the new generation. So, in my mind, the expansion pass is there to extend the game out, I suppose, like with more content. But at the same time too, I feel like it is just a little bit average. I'm actually just going off screen at the moment, and I'm just going to bring up the Pokemon expansion pass. Let's have a look at it, because like now I'm genuinely interested, and I have seen it before, but at the same time too, I am sort of a little bit annoyed. So let's have a look. So from here, just very quickly, the settings of your new adventure. Discover newly discovered Pokemon. Well, okay, first of all, this is good. Like, we want to see new Pokemon, okay? But I feel like there's a lot of old Pokemon returning, and to me, that is very annoying. Let's have a look at this. So the Isle of Armor. So in the Isle of Armor expansion, you'll head to the Isle of Armor, the stage of your new adventure in the Galar region. The Isle of Armor is a giant island full of environments not seen in Galar before. You'll find wave-swept beaches, forests, bogs, caves, and sand dunes. So to me, that sounds like it is quite a substantial area and quite a substantial expansion, which is good. Like, that's what we want, you know. That's fine. But the question is, how long is this going to last? You know, okay, you say it's a massive island, you say it's got this sort of stuff. Are we talking like 10 hours? That's probably reasonable. Or is it less than that? You know, if this is a 5-hour expansion, that's not really much, you know, because then you're leaning too heavy on the Pokemon that are coming in. So if you're not aware, both expansions seem to be introducing 100 Pokemon each, whether they be new or old, rebrought into the game. So if this is only a 5-hour expansion, and same with this one here, It's the Crown of Thunder, or Thundra. That's not a lot. That's not a lot at all. And I feel like if that's the case, they're leaning too heavy on the Pokemon, and that's reusing old content that could have been used from get-go. And I don't know, it's just, there's something in the back of my mind that makes me sit there and go, I really want to be invested in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Like, I actually really do want to enjoy the game for what it is. But I just feel like there's something that we don't know yet. And for myself here in Australia, to buy the expansion pass costs me $45. And that will get me both expansions for one game, which is fine. But this is where the problem then arises as well. A lot of people sat there and said, oh, it's nice to have an expansion that is just based on like expanding the game rather than having to restart the game. Because let's be honest, that business model is old and it needs to die. Like, it really needs to die. And the thing I found with this is despite the fact that you're paying $45, if you're a Pokemon fan, like bigger than myself, like you enjoy Pokemon a lot more than what I do, you've played every game, you've got all the merchandise, you're surrounded by it. Let's be honest, you didn't just buy one version of the game. You bought two. You bought both. So if you're in the States and the expansion pass is apparently $30, the base game is $60. You're buying the expansion pass for both games. You've technically still purchased that third edition. It's no different here in Australia. It's $90 for both expansions. It's about $90 for the game. You've made up the money, and now you're seemingly getting, although maybe more content, in the terms of space, but if it's like the way Pokemon Sword and Shield is now, that's not a lot. Sword and Shield, from my experience so far, trainers are almost a waste of time, because for one, there is not a lot of them, and two, like, when you fight them, they've always got like 1 to 3 Pokemon. They never seem to have any more, and they're all either like, for my sake, they're grossly underleveled, and even when they are relative to your level, if you know the type matchups, like, they are still a minor inconvenience. They don't really get in the way, don't really disturb you. It's just, it is what it is. It's a chore. Not only that too, there are some Pokemon games where I find that the way that the game is paced is a lot more even, it's a lot more interesting. So I'll give you an example. Look at Pokemon Gold and Silver. Now, Gold and Silver, obviously, it holds a high respect in a lot of people's hearts because of the type of game that it is. So, of course, we all know about Kanto, being able to travel back there and to re-experience the old game and all that sort of stuff. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about within the first 8 gym battles. Look at how you travel between to the 5th gym and the 6th gym. You have to pass the 6th gym to get to the 5th gym. And I know you do that in Pokemon Sword and Shield as well. But there's a lot more in there between it that just sort of feels like it's padding out the game, yes, but it's also creating a sense of a world. Like, you sort of feel like it's like, oh, I have to journey across the sea to battle that gym, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to be ready. Whereas in Pokemon Sword and Shield, it just sort of feels like you're not ready for this gym yet. Go run around in a circle, and then run around in a big circle, and then come back. And you don't really do anything. I mean, the whole idea of running in a circle is still technically linear in Sword and Shield, because you're not really doing anything interesting along the way. You're basically fighting 2 or 3 trainers, going into the town, fighting the gym, coming back to, like, down the route, and then you are stuck in the wild area. That's not fun. Like, that's not fun. Like, I'm sure there's people out there that really enjoy it, but I have found it very tedious and very tiring to always go back to an area that seems to be so heavily weighed upon, which feels like a safari zone without the time limit, you know, and that's really bad because I actually like the safari zone in Red and Blue, but it's dull. Like, it's dull. And here's a list of a few other things that sort of annoys me about it, because now that I've sort of mentioned the wild area and gone into detail a little bit more, is the fact that this game is locked as a single player game where Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, you can drop in and out of co-op at all times. Like, that really annoys me quite a lot, because when I look at this game, Temtem, and I'm going to use it as an example now, that's why I'm playing it, I could actually play this game with a friend from the start in co-op and have them control 3 Temtem in battle and me control 3 Temtem in a battle, albeit one at a time, but we're both equally engaged, you know, whereas Pokemon Sword and Shield, it ditches that idea, and I honestly believe, despite the fact that people might go, well, that makes the game too easy, it all depends on the context in which you play it. You know, if you're playing it with a young child, now I have no kids, but if you're playing it with a young child, that gives them a chance to experience the game together. If you're playing it with your partner or significant other, then that gives them a chance, if they've never played Pokemon, to either, you know, enjoy it with you or get into the series the way that you have. Even if you're playing it with your best mate, like your best friend, what's to stop you from just having a little bit of fun? You know, it's very relaxed and it's very enjoyable. Whereas Pokemon Sword and Shield is the opposite. You know, and I know that's the mainstream entry, but Pokemon's had, and I said 15 years in my last video, and that's incorrect. It's over 20 years, right? 1997 is when it came out to Australia. We had Red and Blue. So it's been over 20 years of Pokemon games, and to me, that is just not good enough. Like, I honestly feel that if I missed, I don't know, let's say 3 Pokemon generations. Let's say I stopped playing at Ruby. Okay, so I missed Diamond and Pearl, I missed Black and White, and I'm not going to count the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire because they're remakes, but I missed, let's say, X and Y. Now, if I came back at Sun and Moon, yes, there is quite a leap in terms of a graphical standpoint, but I would sit there, and I would also be introduced to a few new types, but I would sit there and go, there's nothing really here that's much different. And that's a problem, you know, because that's a couple of years in change, and I've experienced nothing different. You know, I came back and I go, it still feels like Pokemon. I would obviously sit there and go, oh, that's quite refreshing, because I've not played it for a couple of years, but that, like, for someone who's played them all like I have, that's actually not that great, because yes, I know what I'm getting, but now by the time Sword and Shield comes out, where, especially when the leap in console power has grown quite significantly, going from 3DS into the Switch, like, Sword and Shield, I feel, is such a missed opportunity. I honestly believe, and I honestly think, in my personal opinion, that Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee are better games. Now, you will say I am incredibly biased because I like Red and Blue. And yes, that is to a certain extent as well. Like, I'm not going to hide that from you. But I just enjoyed it so much more because it allowed me to go on the adventure again that I'd experienced in my childhood. And not only that, like, in my mind, it was well paced enough that I could sit there and enjoy it as a preferred player of Red and Blue. I could still play it at a pace that was slow enough if I wanted it to be, or quick enough if I wanted it to be. You know, especially, as I said, for myself being a original Red and Blue player. You know, I know the story, I know the game, I've played it. You know, I played it 20 odd years ago. But that was so much more enjoyable. And I actually restarted playing Let's Go Eevee again, just purely because I wanted to play a Pokemon game, and I just didn't feel like finishing Sword or Shield. You know, I've now sort of moved on to this Temtem, and I've just enjoyed it so much more. You know, I could go into the fact that the game runs like sort of hot garbage in comparison to other Switch games. I could go into the graphics not looking that great, and there being pop-in and poor textures, but that's stuff we already know. I'm talking about as a fundamental game, like, there's been no change. It's like, you introduce a new type to increase the metagame, but, like, that's fine. But there's been nothing else to mix it up. Like, I sort of feel they're on a Call of Duty roster, like a rotational roster. Here's double battles, now we'll take those away. Here's contests, now we'll take those away. Here's a battle tower, now we'll take those away. Here's national decks, we'll take that away now too. And, like, you know, in a couple of games from now, like in a couple more Pokemon games from now, they'll reintroduce the national decks, and everyone will be happy, and everyone will love Game Freak, and then they'll take it away from you again. You know, now, albeit, like, they've got a lot of Pokemon, I understand, right? But, like, you have to pre-plan these things out. You know, then you need to understand that this is how it is. You know, I understand, like, they have almost over 1,000 Pokemon now. But if you're gonna stick to, like, 2 versions of the game, then why not really hammer home the fact that you need the 2 games? You know, I understand that they always introduce new Pokemon and all that sort of stuff, but why not make it so the roster is quite diverse? You know, introduce the national decks, have all the Pokemon in there, but then have some ones that cross over in both games, and then split the rest right down the middle. You know, so if I bought Sword, for example, maybe there's 300 Pokemon that I can exclusively catch in Sword. Or 300 that I can exclusively catch in Shield. They can be traded in amongst themselves, but they are locked behind those titles. At least that way it feels like I'm getting a different experience to the person sitting next to me, despite the fact that maybe 5 Pokemon are exclusive. And again, I honestly think people wouldn't complain so much, because if you're that fan, you buy both generations anyway. To me, it just seems like I would enjoy the game a lot more because I have the option to play it a little bit more. You know, I have the option to go through it and go, this is a different game than what I've just finished, to try and catch all the 5 missing Pokemon that I don't have. You know, that's just how I think. That's how I'm thinking. That's how I'm running with this. But, you know, as always, let me know down in the comments below. Like, don't keep your mouth closed. Like, talk about it with me. Like, let's discuss it. I would really like to hear what you think about it, because it's something that I'm passionate about. I think I always enjoy Pokemon for the games, but not really much else. So it's upsetting to know that, unfortunately, I am disappointed with this game. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that's how I feel about it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I understand it is quite long, and I hope you get to the end of it. My name's Red. This has been the first Red Talk, so let me know what you think of it down below. Again, comment. Let's see if we can get a couple of subscribers today. So if you liked it, please subscribe to the channel. Give it a like, the video, comment down below, and, you know, hit the little notification bell. Give it a ring-a-ding-ding, just so I know that you're interested in this content, and that you know when I upload every single time. With that, I'll see you next time. I'm out.